Alright, welcome back to another installment of this Voxel devlog that I'm working on. So in this devlog, primarily I'll be covering an inventory overhaul. I've done a lot of progress on that, and then also I've improved texturing a bit. So we'll go into texturing first. It turns out I had a memory using my old texturing system. And the what I was doing it before is I would have these uh, texture files, these individual texture files. I would just load those into their own texture slot. But it was, you only have a limited amount of texture slots. So I figured it would be better to just go to an Atlas anyway. Additionally, there was a memory leak with my textures. However, I was doing the texturing this way. It was not implemented very well, and it was leaking a lot of memory. So I have gone for this Atlas approach. I have a 1024 by 1024 Atlas here, and right now I just have seven blocks. These seven blocks, a couple of them are just kind of debugging textures. You can see that I kind of have to change my texture loading around a little bit, since we're moving from individual file loading to just single file loading and then disseminating that atlas to different tile textures. So that's what we're doing there. The actual texture loader is right here. I also implemented dependency injection because my code base was very, very messy. Yeah, it was not great to look at, and it's probably still not that good to look at. But this dependency injection is very nice because it allows me to keep track of things a lot more easily. Um, but yeah, you can see in our load textures function, we are just pretty much loading the atlas into a byte array and then kind of ordering it in the right way that OpenGL can read it. And then we just have a single call for the texture array. We're just filling it right there. And that's pretty much how we're doing our textures now instead of the single files. There's still a little bit of work we need to do on textures. Some of the stuff isn't completely moved over. Mainly the inventory, and you'll see that this load single texture is not actually moved over since this still uses the file block name. Typically you would provide it a file name, since that's what I was using before. You'd provide it one of these file names, and it would just load that single texture, but I can't do that anymore. I would have to extract it from the atlas, which I'll have to work on. Right now I'm not doing that. I got most of the way there. It's just this single method shouldn't be too hard. Anyway, let's show the inventory off now, and then just general UI styling changes I've made. So I have a stateful UI engine that I kind of made. I've defined my UI system as only being able to render a single menu at one time. And you can see this render current menu function is pretty much what's handling that. And if we go to that reference, we're just calling it at the end of the render UI method, which is just on render frame. So yeah, we're just rendering the whatever UI is showing at the end of the frame. Is pretty simple. We may have to add an exception for like some sort of secondary menu. For example, a confirmation menu may necessitate two menus being rendered at the same time. So it's possible that I may need to slightly modify this in the future, but for now it works pretty well. It's stateful UI. It ensures that only a single menu is rendered at a single time, and then the actual UI helper. This just creates all the menus. It just looks at the current menu and it creates whatever menu is current, pretty much. So I can show off the actual visuals now. I've been kind of messing around with the button colors right here and the menu colors. So we can just make a new world and load that in. All right, so this is our world we have. Um, so you can see that I have a decently fleshed out inventory. It's not complete, obviously, but it has a pretty nice UI theme to it, I think. You know, you hover over an inventory slot and it kind of displays that a 3D rotation rendering of that block, which I think is pretty cool. Um, I have further plans for this. For example, potentially having a tiled frame buffer for the actual still images of these 3D icons. Just kind of like I have a texture atlas, I may also have a frame buffer atlas to handle the actual inventory still icons here. But that's for the future. Right now you can see the load single texture is, I just hard coded it to render just this test texture because I didn't have the time to actually fix it. I didn't really want to at the time. So you can see that's what we have now. It renders in this 3D pane here pretty nicely. Just kind of rotates at a constant rate. And then I can show off the settings menu. So I have settings, back to game, and main menu. Back to game is pretty simple. It just closes that menu. Back to main menu will actually go back to the main menu. However, the menu screen itself is a little bit bugged. I'll have to figure out the view matrix and the projection matrix for that when going back to the main menu. That's a little bit bugged right now. But we can just go back to the world. And it loads pretty fast since technically it's already in memory. But we can see the settings menu is what we have left to look at. So I have two settings here. I have the UI scale, which luckily I was able to apply to every single menu, every single UI. So changing this and applying the settings will immediately apply it to every single menu. We can do the max, which is pretty large. It depends on your monitor, I suppose, but then you can go the minimum, which is 50, and that is pretty small. You can see I implemented a font loading. So I have three sizes of fonts currently. I guess I'm only really using two sizes, but the fonts don't actually scale with the UI, at least currently. I don't know if they will in the future. It'll depend on what I feel like doing, really. So let's set the UI back to something sensible like 100. So you can also see that I have a UI color setting. So if I want to, I can set the UI color and it will just set really the background color to all the UIs. It is, the alpha is not completely at 1, it's at a 0.6. So it's going to be slightly see-through, which I think is pretty good. Generally, I think it's good if you can see through the menu at least a little bit, but not too much that you are not able to see the menu's content. But of course, that is kind of a UX thing, which may or may not change in the future. But right now, I think it looks pretty good. You can see I have a bright pink color. You can pretty much set it to whatever color you want. I may do future color themes for other elements, but right now I'm actually just doing the frame background here. This is that debug menu. We have a bunch of information printing out here. I'm not actually supposed to be able to move this, but I can. So that's, I suppose that's a bit of a bug. All right, well, that's about it for this episode of the Voxel Devlog. Um, I hope to continue working on the UI, fleshing it out a bit. That'd be really nice, and hopefully work on the world a bit because we haven't actually. There's still a lot of things we need to do for this. For example, removing blocks, which we can't actually do at this point. That's a bit complicated. Collision detection is also something we need to do. I want to do biomes eventually and kind of figure out noise algorithms for which blocks can generate where. Right now it's pretty random, but it doesn't really need to be organized at this point. But I do eventually want to organize it. Well, until next time, I'll see you guys later.